Going back to just dealing with the logo, it's important to go over something that I didn't earlier, and that's the fact that logos, sometimes they will last forever, sometimes they need to change and be updated because sometimes they just need updating. Most brands get some type of a makeover to them. An example here is going to be the MasterCard logo. This one is the original bank card was this thing with an eye on it, and I can't remember exactly what that said on there, and it's illegible on this. But then they decided to change the name of it. It went to being Master Charge, not MasterCard. It was Master Charge, and came up with the idea of the two circles. It still had the little eye logo on it right at the bottom. So that was back in 1968. In 79, the logo was updated again with a name change to MasterCard. Same two logo, or same two balls, but they changed the name of the card. Then in 1990 it was changed again, and rather than having the transparency, it was two balls with lines in there, which was updated again in 96, carried over until 2016 to the MasterCard, and then you can see the logos as they are being used now, or with the last update that was done to them. So these things can change over time. I'm going to show you the Aunt Jemima, and all of the changes this has gone through. Back in the 1880s, we have the original packaging, followed by the 1912 version, followed by the 1925 version, followed by the 1950s, which was updated again in 1968, changed again in 1989, changed again in 93. The portrait was dropped in 2020, and in 2021 the company's name was changed from Aunt Jemima to Pearl Milling Company. Sometimes logos need to be updated and need to change. Going on with brand strategy, brand construction, the story. It's basically a story. Brands are stories. When most products and services are on a par, meaning they all have pretty much the same thing going for them, what differentiates and illuminates one over another is that brand narrative. The core brand narrative is a strategic branding premise which sets the foundational brand essence. It expresses the brand values. It makes the emotional connection with the audience. The core brand narrative has to be the point of entry and the foundation for all the other specific stories to keep the brand message relevant, engaging, and on track, and it needs to be something to aid the brand resonance. The overarching core brand narrative has to take into account what's important to the audience, plus what the brand needs to communicate to meet its goals. It has to develop stories around that sweet spot between audience aspirations and the goals of the brand. Story building has to be at the core of the marketing strategy, from branding through advertising. A relatable story turns a product or service into a brand, into something we recognize and something we trust. Part of what goes into creating that core brand story, from the launch of the brand or refreshment of the brand or evolution of the brand, is forming a global construct around what the brand represents. Usually the experts base the construct on what is relevant to the needs and desires of the target audience, plus a relatable brand attribute. By staking a construct, essentially a claim, the brand owns it against the competition, often successfully because the competition is unlikely to claim the same thing because it wants to differentiate itself. Preemptively, claiming an attribute helps position the brand in the consumer's mind. People think of that brand related to that particular attribute. For example, Volvo owns the construct of safety. Method owns the construct of being environmentally friendly. BMW owns the construct of superior German engineering. We can think of a brand construct as providing an armature for its story. It helps focus strategy to form a unique, differentiating, ownable brand position, intended to persuade people to think of it in a certain way. The goal is to deliver on that brand promise. A strategic guiding construct stresses the value promised to people. In today's competitive worldwide marketplace, there's so many different brands in each product and service category. It's a business imperative for each brand's identity to communicate clearly and consistently as well as be distinctive. A visual identity is the visual and written articulation of a brand or entity, including all the pertinent design, like the logo, the letterhead, the business card, the website. This is also called brand identity and corporate identity. A logo carries value. Simply think of famous brands and their logos will pop right into your mind. A visual identity should be identifiable. The name, the shape, the forms, the colors are all distinguishing and become associated with the brand. Memorable. The name, the shapes, the forms, the colors are coherent and easily remembered. Distinctive. The name, shape, formats, and colors are uniquely characteristic to that entity and differentiates it from the competition. Sustainable. The name, the shapes, the forms, the colors will endure and be relevant for a certain period of years. Flexible and extendable. The name, the shape, the forms, the colors are flexible enough to work across media, to grow with the entity, and they should be adaptable to brand extensions and sub-brands. You come up with the visual identity design concept based on a brand's or entity's purpose. What are its core values? What are its goals? The typefaces, the shapes or the forms of the logo, the visual characteristics of the logo, the color palette, those are all going to set the framework for the entire visual identity. Any brand touchpoint is someone's experience with a brand. Creating coherence entails weaving a common thread across the identity design solution. Considerations for establishing coherence are strategy. All graphic design solutions should be consistent with the brand strategy and values, plus convey a related brand voice. Similar to style, the brand look and feel form a visual attitude, functioning to create uniqueness and distinction, expressed through the specifics of the visualization and composition. This includes the color palette, the characteristics and qualities of lines and shapes and textures, the typefaces, the images, any other visual elements, and coherence. 4 keys to coherence are establishing and maintaining an omnimedia color palette, the logo, the typefaces, and any shapes. Reviewing the logo. Remember there are logo type, which is also called a word mark. That's the word spelled out. We have the letter mark, where it uses the initials. We have symbol marks, which are pictorial or abstract or non-representational. It may or may not be combined with the name of the brand. Remember there is the letter form symbol, which uses the symbol coupled with the name of the brand, or you might end up with the character icon like the Aflac duck. If you're going to be using type, you need to consider legibility, the appropriateness, the voice and expression of the typeface. Is it unique? Is it distinct? How is it going to differentiate itself from the competition? Select a typeface family because of the range of the variations available, flexibility of use, flexibility with width and whites, and remember the numerals as well as the bullets. When selecting the typeface, look at it on many different devices and in many different environments, low resolution as well as high resolution, the largest to the smallest sizes. Web fonts need to be built around web standards, which are going to be different than those in print. Make sure that the typeface works well in black and white as well as color. And select the typeface for the text of the correspondence that you're doing on stationery that's going to complement the logo, but not replicate it. Consider the design for letterheads. A letterhead is a business tool. You use it for legal purposes as well as for other formal uses. It's something that's printed on fine paper and it has to be viewed in digital page as well. The letterhead design should be consistent with all the other components of the visual ID, the logo, the color palette, and any graphic or verbal articulation associated with the brand. Remember to leave plenty of room when you're designing a letterhead for the actual correspondence. Include a sample letter on your letterhead sketches and on your comps so that you can plan for space for correspondence. The standard US size for letters is the 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper that we use. That's also used in Mexico and Canada. Other countries will use a metric system of measurement, so you need to consider that you're going to have different sizes for European measurements. Letterhead is folded to fit into a standard size envelope, and the composition needs to take into account those folds. The paper selection and ink should be able to hold up for folding and not crack or not create bulges. So you wouldn't want too heavy of a paper that won't fold easily into thirds to fit into a standard size business envelope. Paper used should be able to be printed on both in ink as well as laser, and you need to be able to sign papers with ink from a pen as well. Along with the letterhead design, you have to have templates for letter positioning and size and typeface with font sizes preset. Template helps to ensure that there's coherence between the designs. This is a great example of branding going across media. The branding was inspired by the Aldridge Museum architecture and the strong progressive upward arrow. You have a lovely example of how the colors and the typefaces all work together, forming the letterhead stationery as well as print pieces, as well as the online media presence, and how everything is coordinated and works well both on large screen, small screen, and in print.